People always ask me if it was dramatic. They want the scene, the shouting, the door slamming, someone reaching for me and being pulled away. But that's not what happened. What happened was quieter, and in some ways that made it harder to explain for a long time. My parents separated in November. I was 7, my brother was 9, my sister was 5. There were 2 cars in the driveway that morning, and the decision about who went where had apparently been made the night before, in a conversation I wasn't part of, in a language I didn't speak yet. The language adults use when they're dividing things. My mother took my brother, my father took my sister. I stood on the porch with a bag that had been packed for me, and I watched both cars leave in different directions. A woman I didn't recognize was standing beside me. She worked for the county. She had a clipboard. I don't remember being told an explanation. Maybe one was given. I remember the clipboard. The facility was called Maplewood. It was not cruel. I want to be precise about that, because people layer their own images onto the word orphanage, and most of them are wrong, at least about this one. It was underfunded and overworked and smelled like industrial cleaning fluid and cafeteria bread. The staff were tired. Some of them were kind in ways they didn't have the bandwidth to perform. A few were not kind at all. What it gave me, without meaning to, was a particular kind of clarity. No one at Maplewood owed me anything beyond what was required of them. Once I understood that, really understood it, somewhere around age 9, something settled in me. I stopped waiting for a different version of the situation to arrive. I started paying attention to the one I was in. I read everything I could find. I asked questions that probably annoyed people. I learned that if you did your work quietly and consistently, you became easier to help and people helped you. Not out of love, out of efficiency. That was fine. I learned to work with efficiency. I aged out at 18 with a partial scholarship, a reference letter from a caseworker named Ruth who I still think about sometimes, and a functional understanding that no one was coming. Not as a tragedy, just as a fact to build from. The next several years are not interesting to describe. They were just years. Community college. A job in logistics that taught me how supply chains fail and why. A second job, a certification. A decision to start something small with 2 people I trusted and capital I had saved with a stubbornness that probably looked, from the outside, like deprivation. It wasn't deprivation. It was just the way I knew how to move through the world. Carefully, without assuming the ground would hold. The company was in supply chain consulting eventually. It grew in the way that real things grow, unevenly, with problems, with a failed partnership in year 3 that nearly ended it, and then didn't. By the time I was 34, we had 41 employees and contracts with 4 regional hospital networks. I did not think of this as remarkable. It was the result of years of specific decisions, that's all. A journalist wrote a profile. Regional publication. The kind that covers business stories with a human angle. She was thorough and fair. The piece ran on a Tuesday. It included my name, the company's revenue figures and a photograph of me at my desk. Nothing staged, just working. I didn't think much about it at the time. My phone rang 3 days later. A number I didn't recognize, but something in my chest recognized before my mind did. I let it ring. It went to voicemail, my brother's voice, older of course, careful in the way voices are when they've rehearsed, something about being proud of me, something about wanting to reconnect. I listened to it once and set the phone face down on the desk. More calls followed, a cousin I had met twice. My mother 2 days apart, the second time she left a voicemail. Her voice was smaller than I remembered, or maybe I was just bigger now, and that changed the acoustics of things. My father called on a Thursday evening, 1 voicemail. He said my name at the beginning and again at the end. He said he hoped I was well. He said he'd like to talk, when I was ready. I sat with the phone in my hand for a long time after that one. 30 minutes, I think, before I set it down. I wasn't savoring anything. I want to be clear about that. There was no satisfaction in the silence, not the clean, cinematic kind people imagine. It was more complicated than that. There was something that felt like grief, which surprised me, because I thought I had finished grieving a long time ago. Maybe you don't finish. Maybe it just changes shape. But I didn't call back. I haven't, not because I want them to suffer. I'm not interested in their suffering. I'm not interested in the conversation we would have to have first. The one where we all pretend the arithmetic made sense. Where someone offers an explanation that was 30 years too late to land the way it needed to. I have 41 employees. I have work I believe in. I have a small apartment that is entirely mine. Which sounds like a modest thing to say and is, in fact, the most significant thing I own. When the interviewer asks me if I have regrets, I tell her the truth. I say, I'm not sure regret is the right word. I think I'm still figuring out what the right word is. She writes that down. I think that's the most honest thing I've said in a long time.